We are live with the Boone and Cope Show.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. This is episode 003. It's crazy. How you doing over there, Cope?
I'm doing pretty good tonight. How about you, Ben?
I can't complain. My eyes are a little blurry tonight. Other than that, I'm doing pretty well.
Yeah, congratulations on your eye surgery. You finally see 2020.
Finally. Yeah, not quite there yet. Recovering. Had it about 2 weeks ago, and I'm rolling down the river now. And no glasses, no contacts. And yeah, the world is bright and the future looks great. So excited to be on the Boone and Cope Show tonight for us. I don't know what it is for you. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good night, whatever. We hope you're happy where you're at and you're excited for this episode because we are. What's been on your mind, Cope?
I had a couple things on my mind through this week. Energy, critical thinking, authenticity. A couple of things that go along with that. And we've had some really good conversations through the week. I was inspired by a book I read recently by Jack Kerouac. Some really interesting stories of his quote-unquote biography. He always wrote in an autobiographical sense, but he always changed the names of the characters and the places that they lived in order not to get sued in a libel suit or something.
Interesting. What's that book called? On the Road?
That is On the Road.
On the Road.
That's going to be part of our Good Word segment, so we'll get to that in a little bit. But the main thing that was weighing on my mind was this idea of energy, okay? Mm-hmm. Energy or a zest for life.
Zest for life. We're excited. So a big part of this this week, we've been talking a lot about time and life itself, what it means to us, how to use it, how to utilize it, how to make the most positive outcome from your life and from the time that you have here on Earth. Pretty heavy stuff, really. I think that On the Road book came and fit right into play. So yeah, we're excited. We got a couple good topics. Let's rock and roll, brother.
I think that's what brings me so much joy of doing this podcast every week is that you can expand your mind or you can elaborate on some topics that maybe you don't get into in your everyday conversations with, run-of-the-mill people.
Right.
And I don't want to say average people. I don't want to say, oh, yeah, that's just somebody with a small mind or something. But sometimes you have small talks with people. And maybe shallow is the best word. Sometimes talking about the weather just doesn't scratch that itch you have for something a little bit deeper, more intellectual.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think that's our constant goal is to get past those conversations and enter a more deeper realm where there's knowledge to be gained,
So you were talking about some music that you've written based on some conversations that we've had. Mm-hmm. What was your thought process into this? And just give us a little background on what it was.
Yeah, so I just wrote a song, and I'm not sure what it's going to be called yet. For now, it's called Time. And it's basically begging the public or the listener to show courtesy to time, to understand the weight that it carries, how important it really and truly is. Because you're only this young for so long. And even when you get older, you're only old for so long. So every step in your life, you're passing through different phases, and you're only going to be there for a while. And so I think it's just important, and I think we easily lose sight of how important that time and those phases of our life truly are. And so that's what the song's about. It pretty much just opens up, when you're young, you just dream of when you're older, and when you're older, you just dream of when you were younger. And it's kind of an old man talking. Yeah, it's just an old man talking to me or you or whoever it is, and he's like, you laugh, he says, one of these days you're going to blink and suddenly you're older. You laugh, but boy, it's true. I was just like you. And it's like this, from an old man talking to a young kid that soak it up, and even a young kid could be 30 years old or 40 years old and the sight of an old man, And so, just understanding the weight that time truly, truly carries in your life and understanding that, how to utilize that and use that for a more positive time. So, yeah, it's good stuff. I'm excited to share it.
I always try to figure why people say, oh, you guys have old souls. You're old men in young men's bodies. And I always try to figure out what that actually means. What's that mean to them? Not in the creepy sense.
I don't know. I think to them it means you're just ahead of your time. You're ahead of your natural average age and what you're supposed to be, not necessarily what you're supposed to be doing, but maybe what you're supposed to be thinking about. And I think society labels a certain category. It labels certain subjects that you're supposed to, be covered with or caught inside of. And I think that
when
sometimes
you're young, you're living in the moment.
Yeah,
you don't
exactly.
really think about long-term things. And then as you get older and you see your children grow up and you see your grandchildren and all those, then you get more reflective on your life backward.
Yeah, for sure.
Rather than looking towards the future. But we kind of see them from both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah. So I think we hit that checkpoint a little early in life. And I think that that's what people mean is like, oh, shoot, you're already there. You're where it took me to get to 40 or 50, and your mindset is already there. There. Your experiences aren't, obviously, but your mindset has already gotten that far. I wasn't thinking about that stuff when I was 21. I can promise you that. How many times have we heard that? Yeah, and so, we've done some dumb stuff. We've done the stupid phases. Of
course, we took advantage of our youth for sure.
We've been through all of the dumb phases that you sometimes regret, but you look back on and you're like, oh yeah, that's a part of life. And I think that that's what all of our topics this week that we spoke about on the phone or through text, I think it all has led us to this conversation. And we've had some deep conversations in the last few nights. My goodness. It's amazing. Love it.
Yeah, talking about energy, honestly, Boone, I just can't wait. I keep on thinking about this book. I'm going to go ahead and introduce the good words.
Okay, we're doing our good words? Okay, we can't wait. That's all right. Hit me.
I've just been so excited to share this with you. And the funny thing is, I was actually looking at the bookmark that I made up. I'm always too cheap to go and buy my own bookmark.
Oh, you made a bookmark.
So it does. It just says energy, right? Because that's what's been on my mind this whole time. Okay, so this comes from the book. Yes. This comes from the book Jack Kerouac, On the Road. Okay. I'll read this segment, and then I'll give you a little bit of background on where Jack was when he was writing this book or in the process.
Hit me.
All right. This is early in the book. He's walking with his friends in New York City, and he's trying to keep up with them because they're so filled with zest and energy of life. And he always feels like he's the one following behind them, trying to catch up.
Okay.
He says, I've been going all my life after people who interest me, because the only people for me are the mad ones. The ones who are mad to live, mad to talk, mad to be saved, desirous of everything at the same time. The ones who never yawn or say a commonplace thing, but burn, 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 like fabulous yellow Roman candles exploding like spiders across the stars. And in the middle, you see the blue center light pop, and everyone goes, ah.
Dang. Talk about some imagery.
He's even got this energy or zest in the words. The way he writes, I can imagine, because I've got a little bit of background, and I was telling you about this the other day, a little bit of background on how he wrote this book. Amazing story.
Unbelievable.
Right? So
please, if you don't listen to anything else in this podcast, I beg of you to turn the knob of volume up on this next 2 minutes while Cope talks, because this story,
I know it got you excited, yeah.
is one of my favorite stories.
So I can't remember the name of the poet, but Jack was familiar with many different poets and authors and things like that. He studied literature in college, and he was inspired by one poet who said that remember this is the 1950s, so everyone's using typewriters at this time. So when you feed your paper into the typewriter, when you get to the end of it, you actually have to take it out, place it to the side, feed in a new piece of paper, and continue your thoughts. And the poet always said that he felt like he got out of his rhythm and couldn't get it back after he got to the end of the page and had to switch again, right? He lost that rhythm. So Jack's solution to this was to go and get 12-foot rolls of tracing paper. He trimmed down the right margin edge so that they fit into his typewriter. And then he taped 10 of those together to make a 150-foot roll of continuous sheets of paper.
That is insane.
And he had, as you can hear from his words, he had that kind of style that was very excited, very rhythmic, and he didn't want to stop typing the entire time. So I see that you have some paper there.
Yeah, I'm demonstrating to the camera right now. For those of you who can't see, I have several pieces of paper that are cut to typewriter length, and I'm trying to get a visual aid here of how crazy that would be to put all that in typewriter. And you said 120 feet, right?
Yeah.
That's insane.
So his style of typing was so quick that he wrote this entire book in 3 weeks, a 3-week span. So as he's typing in this typewriter, his wife at the time remarks that when she would come in, the entire apartment would be covered with damp white T-shirts. And that was because he was typing so quickly, so furiously, that he was profusely sweating through these T-shirts, and he would have to stop and hang them up for them to dry and put on a new one and continue typing. And in 3 weeks, he wrote the entire first draft of that book. It took a number of years afterwards to publish it because so many people misunderstood what he was trying to get at with the literature. But when it eventually did, it was one of those quote-unquote overnight successes.
Right.
The next day, he had rave reviews from the New York Times and many other newspapers that were influential at the time, and he became an icon or a figurehead for the Beat generation.
That's so crazy, man. That is so crazy. And I don't know why, I can relate to that to a great extent because I love typing on my typewriter. I got a 1947 Royal Black typewriter, for those of you who don't know. And I have stained antique paper that I type on. And there is something about when you get rolling and you can't keep up with your thoughts because you are typing as fast as you possibly can, as fast and as accurately as you possibly can. Because with a typewriter, it's not backspace, erase that letter and retype the correct one. You get going as fast as you can. You can't keep up with your thought. And then you've got to take the paper, you got to flick the lever over, you got to scroll the paper up out of it, you got to set it down, grab another piece of paper, slide it into the pocket, flap the lever down, take both knobs, roll it, get it perfect, slide it over, and boom, you're going again. So with all that, it's like, dang, you break that rhythm. So to think that he actually got 120 feet of paper, basically, that's that's amazing. I don't know why I never thought of that.
Yeah, something to the tune of 84,000 words in just a couple weeks.
Gosh, that's amazing.
That's really getting with
incredible. I would love to do that for 3 weeks. But
so
can you imagine?
We're talking about the rhythm of typing, right? Mm-hmm. Especially with a mechanical typewriter. So the great Hunter S. Thompson, father of gonzo journalism, right? He wrote with that eclectic style of rat-tat-tat-tat, right at the typewriter, crazy, string of free association, conscious thoughts going right into the ink. And what he would do when he was an up-and-coming writer and he was trying to find his own voice is that he would study the books of other people. And one of the great ones was The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Mm-hmm. And Hunter S. Thompson would sit at his typewriter when he was in his early 20s or so, and he would type the entire book.
Yeah.
And one of his friends remarked in a documentary I'd seen that called Gonzo. He said, I'd say Hunter probably wrote it just about 100 times. And
that is crazy.
Hunter remarked that, when you start typing someone else's work, you get into the rhythm or the feing of how they were when they were typing it. You can feel how
they typed it.
Yeah.
Hey, that's no joke. I have done that before, and there's a lot of truth in that. Not The Great Gatsby 100 times, that's insane. But yeah, writing the same work over and over and over again, you can feel on a typewriter how that author felt when he was writing it. You can feel the rhythm. Oh man, there's just nothing like a typewriter. It's wonderful. It's magnificent.
How interesting is it talking about stories like that? There's nothing particularly amazing about writing a book 100 times on a typewriter or writing or typing a 120-foot roll of paper, but that adds to the legend.
Right.
It's just something that sticks in your mind. You're like, man, that is a good story. And, we always wrap up all of our shows and podcasts with, if it makes a better story, do it. Oh, God, and those are the kinds of things I think before I start a project. I'm like, what can I do if this really takes off? What would make a better story about this?
Right.
I know you live your life the same exact way.
Oh, man. And I think
I've heard
at
so
some
many of your
point,
different exploits.
I think at some point we'll have to do a podcast just on if it makes a better story, do it. Because I think it can be marginalized into a narrow-minded way of thinking. Like, I can either go out tonight or stay in. Oh, if it makes a better story, do it. Not necessarily that. It's not always just that simple. Sometimes it's about building the characteristics of yourself and how that story will reflect in the past when someone is in the future looking back on you. That's that story. That's part of your story. When we say if it makes a better story, do it, we're not just talking about the moment that we're in, deciding to either say yes or no to the right or wrong thing. I mean, we're talking about building yourself, We're talking about the last time someone speaks the words of your name and what they're going to say. Oh, man. There's a heavy weight to it. So, yeah, we'll have to do a podcast on that at some point.
Who was it? Was it was it Mark Twain that said a man... No, I'm sorry.
A man dies twice. That wasn't Mark Twain.
It wasn't Mark Twain. Do you remember who that was? But the quote goes, a man dies twice, once when his body leaves this earth, and second when the last person utters his name.
Dang, I wish I could remember who wrote that. But that's...
The one I was thinking is actually a little less bleak by Mark Twain, and it's the reversal. So you're born twice. Once when you enter this world, and the second time you're born is when you figure out why.
Yep, that's phenomenal. That's great. Speaking of Mark Twain, you did your good word segment. I got mine coming up.
I call
Mark
it
Twain.
Didn't I?
This was a book gifted to me from my blood brother, Cope. So, classic book. A lot of people know the book, but have literally never read it. And it's Huck Finn, which is amazing. Huck Finn is great. So Tom Sawyer's companion, of course, Huck Finn. And
The
of course, he starts out
quintessential great American novel.
Oh, man. So I went simple today because I knew you were going with a story that I just was not going to top this week because all our conversations about On the Road, the novel, I was like, that's what I was going to write about. I'm going to take it a different perspective, and I'm going to shift it back to basically a lesson we can all learn and live out ourselves every single day. And that's what this good word segment is for today. So this is this is from Huck Finn. Like I said, Mark Twain, phenomenal freaking author. All right, so this is just a short one. This is where Huck Finn is talking about Colonel Grangerford, all right? And so he brings in his character, and this is how he describes this man, okay? You don't need to know anything about this book or who this guy was, but just this line right here should sum up who you are as a person. Everyone loved to have him around, too. He was sunshine most always. I mean, he made it seem like good weather. When he turned into a cloud, it was awful dark for half a minute, and that was enough. There wasn't nothing go wrong again for a whole week. He didn't ever have to tell anybody their manners. Everybody was always good-mannered where he was. I love that. That can sum up a man pretty quick. And the whole reason I wanted to read that is because this one line. I had to build it up there. This one line of, everybody loved to have him around too. He was sunshine most always. I mean, he always made it seem like good weather. Dang. That portrays the personality of a man and sums it up pretty hardcore in just a couple sentences. And the reason I think it's so important. Oh, it's phenomenal writing. And it seems and sounds so simple, but I think that you can really put a magnifying glass on it and turn it on yourself too. So a magnifying glass ain't a mirror in the same image. And take a look at yourself and wonder if you bring good weather to other people. When you walk in a room, is that how somebody feels about the way and the atmosphere that you bring into an area? Which is pretty, I mean, that's pretty heavy, really. I mean, if that's how you are and that's the person you are, that's great. But 99.99% of us don't always have that, that effect on people. And I think that sometimes that's a good thing to concentrate on is being able to have that effect on people. Always seeming like good weather. Even when you're out there and it's raining all day long and you're working HVAC, there ain't no roof on the building, and you're just out there soaking wet, cold all day.
Right.
But when you walk into a room and you see somebody that's also had a bad day, you can be some good weather for them. So,
that's right.
Mark Twain.
I like that when you walk into a room. What kind of weather are you bringing? What's the weather forecast when you're headed down the street?
Exactly. I don't know, man. I just like I said, it's simple, but I like it. Good weather.
I do like that. I think Hemingway said that Huckleberry Finn was the father of all American literature.
Yeah, man. That's crazy. So if you haven't read it, I strongly encourage you to read it. You're probably going to have a tough time because the way that he wrote the novel is pretty intense as far as language, the way that he writes.
It was of the time period that he wrote it in also. Which
was great. That's the whole thing that makes it hard to read. But when you get into that groove and you read through that, it's pretty amazing book. All right, brother. What covers energy? We're talking about energy. That's right along the lines too. What we got next? What's that other topic that we had?
Well, I was thinking about authenticity.
Authenticity, that's right.
So to this podcast, we always try to bring in things that we've talked out over the week. We usually call each other once or twice each day. If you didn't know, I'm in Indiana. Boone is in Georgia. So we are separated blood brothers, but not separated completely.
That's right.
So one of the things that I was thinking about this week and we talked over was the thought of authenticity or being unique to yourself. And I know we intensely experience this because we have creative ambitions, right? But that doesn't just have to be about that, but it can also be about people that maybe aren't pursuing some kind of creative ambition or career, but are going through daily life. And sometimes you feel like you have to put on a face. Or with social media, we've all kind of been conditioned to be in the best lighting, take 120 photos before you post one.
Get the right filter.
Get the right filter, all of that crap. And I wish we could all get over it. Right. And it's as much advice to the people out there listening as it is to you and I. I think sometimes the advice we give is the advice that we think we should take as well. So with social media, I feel like you have to put on that face sometimes. And I think sometimes people would get more value out of it is if you were just a little bit more real.
Right.
Sometimes I see these posts come across and it's people acknowledging things that are not so glamorous about their lives. They say, my child is spoiled, or I was an alcoholic, or, I've been through these struggles in life and it's not pretty, but here I am today, acknowledging my past and moving towards a brighter future. And I think that is way more motivational and valuable to people than it is to be like, my life is perfect. Look at me. Ha, ha, ha.
Right. I absolutely agree. And I think, we've had a conversation in the past where you talked about how much, not all the time, but sometimes you get on Instagram and you just hate those perfect pictures of just the most perfectly edited, perfect picture, the horizon, the whatevers. And it's like, man, like you spent hours and hours. Don't get me wrong. I love a good pic. I went to Alaska. I got a lot of awesome shots that came home. I didn't even have to edit half of them, honestly. They were just beautiful in themselves.
That's when you know it's good.
Yeah. But it's like, come on, people. Life isn't always that beautiful. It's not always that perfect. Like sometimes I wish there was an app that was just called like Raw, and you just upload something, and it won't let you put filters on, and it won't let you do all these things. It won't let you have all this room to play. It just makes you document your life. Right. And put it out there.
I tell you what, I'm always the spoiler of your good ideas because every time you tell me a good idea,
someone already did that.
I say, oh, wait, there was something. So Just a quick side note. So there was an app in development, and it never really took off. But it was by Casey Neistat, and I can't remember the name of the app. But essentially, what you do is your front camera, it's got a photo sensor to see if it's light or dark. They use that, and basically when you take your phone and you put it to your chest, it takes like a picture or like a 6-second video, and then it beeps, and then it immediately posts. There is no way for you to review it or anything.
Wow.
It posts immediately, and the idea was, oh, I'm going to put it to my chest. This is what I see, and now it's out there. It's a first-person point of view. Unfortunately, it didn't take off, so I guess people don't really want it. But I thought it was a beautiful concept.
I tell you, man, that's exactly what that's pretty much exactly what I was thinking. That's great though. But I think you're right. I don't think people want everyone. See, society has polluted our minds and polluted even the youngest generation now that's going through the technology phase, where they're getting their phones and stuff. They are already so polluted by the time they get their first phones. That's the first thing they look for. First thing they do is take a selfie and swipe through all the filters and try to, what's the filter that can make my face glow and hide my blemishes? Hide this about me. What's that best angle to where I look to the left, but the phone is quartered and it doesn't make my face look fat? It's like, come on, people. Hey, just be you. Just be you. I think I came up with a quote a long time ago. You can be anyone, but nobody can be you. You can be anyone or anything, but nobody can be you.
That's correct.
And with that message, we are going to go to a break and give a shout out to our sponsor. And we'll be right back. Boone & Co. Don't go anywhere. And tune your ears to the Boone & Co. show. And now a message from our sponsors. We don't have any sponsors. Thanks. And we're back with the Boone & Co. show, episode 003. Thank you for that great message there from our sponsor. All right,
yes,
Cope.
Thank you for your patience, viewership.
Thank you for your patience, viewership. Had to reset the cameras.
All right, so we took a quick pause, and we're going to make a left turn.
Left turn.
We're going to mix up the topics a little bit than what we planned. And
This is where it gets good, folks.
Yes, we're taking a detour. So a couple months ago, I was walking the dog downtown Evansville. Midnight. Boone is doing God knows what at 1 o'clock in the morning in Georgia. And we had this nice conversation about how there's resources yet to be tapped as far as creativity goes. And I know that's a broad stroke statement, but the way that you can present things with our technology moving forward, you've got the VR coming up where you strap on a headset, or maybe you even just pop in a contact in here just a few short years, and it's a altered reality or a completely virtual reality where you can see, taste, smell, everything feels real, and they're going to need creators to create those experiences. And I mean, that leaves the door just wide open, right? It's not just video games or art or music or film. It's everything combined together because it's a human experience. But also we've talked about going backward in the past, right? And you had such an interesting statement, and I won't forget it. And I think about it all the time, and I don't know if I have an answer for it.
Okay.
But you said, what if the computers were never invented? Because, of course, you're a huge fan of Walt Disney, and he's kind of one of the pioneers as far as animation goes, right?
Yes.
There was a room full of people in the early 1900s that when he paired moving cartoon images with sounds and dialogue, it blew people's minds.
Yeah.
And then you say, well, it's so easy today to do that because of computers, right? Zeros and ones and everything in between. With technology, it's not writing on a piece of paper, flipping it back, making a little adjustment, flipping back. Kind of like stop motion, but with paper.
Right.
So you said, I wonder if those were never invented, how would we move forward with technology if we didn't have computers? And you said, let's put a book stamp right there on that moment in time, And then going forward, we don't have the technological advancement. How do you move forward? And I think sometimes it gets into a little bit of like, you've seen like these steampunk people, right? Where they do these futuristic technologies, but they're ran by steam,
Right.
things like that. It gets real weird, like
does.
at Comic-Con and all that.
It's crazy. Yeah.
But the sentiment is there in that they're imagining how the future would look if certain things had not taken place.
Right.
An alternate reality.
The whole thing is there's different methods to everything that we do. So those guys that even paved the way, like Walt Disney and those guys, if they would have never come around, someone would have come around eventually with a different method than Walt Disney would have come around with. And in turn, we would have had a different way to view that kind of stuff. And eventually over time, it would have changed the whole thing. It would have changed the whole lineup. You know, it was like the butterfly effect. Literally have changed and molded and shaped the way of the world in viewing media, which is an incredible thought, that if some of those people weren't around, it would have been done differently. But they outweighed the people that were doing it differently at that time, and they shut them down, you know. Not because they didn't want them to do anything, but their ways were so big, were so greater, so much greater, that everything else became obsolete. So anything else anyone else was doing in media became obsolete because the guys like Walt Disney were doing it their way, and they were so far ahead of everything that the world just went with it. But if the world would have never went with it, then what else would have happened, you know? And I think it's a great thought. It makes my brain hurt sometimes. But I tell you what, last night... Yeah. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You said last night what?
Last night I was thinking about this.
Ah, gotcha. So you're pondering on it.
Yeah.
I know sometimes you have these thoughts and you say, ooh, I'm going to go to the studio. I'm going to experiment with this a lot. Or dabble in it anyway.
Right.
I know you did some experimentation with animation
Yeah.
and then new ways of creating that animation. But the thought is there that you use old tools to try to think what those people in those days would use those tools for moving forward.
Right.
And it's such an interesting thing
It is.
to ponder.
It's crazy. Because you think about the first show Walt Disney ever did. And dang, I hope I don't mess this up. I used to know it like the back of my hand. I want to say it was 1939 or 1941. Okay? It was the first time animation came to be. Now, it had come in France at an earlier time through some dude's name that I can't pronounce. But the first time that someone did a live animation show and a feature where a person was in an animation with characters that had been drawn was with
Live action.
live action animation was with Walt Disney and his crew. And like I said, check my facts, but I want to say it was 39, somewhere around there, 1939. I want to say that's right. Anyway, it's probably in the 20s, and I'm stupid. But I've
Numbers are irrelevant.
Numbers
It's
are
about the
irrelevant,
story.
exactly. But they had actually projected their images. Okay, so they basically took their drawings, and they flipped them through this projector. They'd hung a sheet outside, okay? So outside they got this white sheet hanging. And they are, by way of light, projecting these drawings in motion that are flipping through onto this sheet. And there are guys behind the curtain, behind the sheet, a group of Disney and his guys, and they have the show memorized so well that they are doing voices and sound effects live in time, synced with the animation, which was the first time that sound was ever heard with an actual animation. And it all came to life. And I'm sitting there thinking, could you imagine to be in the front row? Can you imagine be standing outside watching all of this happen for the first time in history? You are hearing something come to life through a screen of images. It's phenomenal. It's amazing.
And we're talking like a short, tiny film, like, not very long at all, but it took an ungodly amount of
15,
hours
30
to
seconds.
draw it. Draw it by hand was an amazing
My
feat.
gosh. Thousands
So most
of
people,
drawings.
here's how I see it, right? History tends to repeat itself, right? Most people see things as the way they are at face value, and then other people, visionaries, like Walt Disney, see things for the potential of what they could be.
Right.
Right? So most people would say, oh, that's a cool gimmick. I'll pay 5-10 cents to go to the theater and watch that a few times.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll say, wow, that'll be great when they make a bunch more like that.
Right.
That'll be entertaining. But people like Walt Disney see things like that, and other creatives, of course. And they said, no, this could be a whole film.
Yeah.
This could be an entire film with worlds built and layers. And, you know, they created the parallax effect with certain layers of animation crisscrossing each other, which is insane.
Unbelievable.
But he knew that there was something greater than what was at face value. And I feel like that a lot in life is like, you see little hints of things that are to come.
Yeah.
And most people go, oh yeah, that's a cool little gimmick. Yeah, that's nice. That's fun. Right? But you go, no, think of this in 10, 15, 20 years from now. It's going to be incredible and blow your mind.
Right.
And you don't want to be the last one to find out about it. You want to be on the cutting edge of things.
Edge of that, yeah. Well, you think about all of the movies that you see, right? So all of these movies that have some crazy lab, you know, and it's like, I don't know, freaking aliens or robots or someone's taking over the world, and these guys come into a lab and they have like a iPad-looking thing, and all of a sudden they just slide their hand and it pops up, and it's like a holographic image. Yeah, it's a holographic image in front of them, and they're like touching it and swiping stuff, and Iron Man, you know, and he's like pulling parts, you know, and swinging his arms around, and all these parts are coming together, and he's building this thing. And it's like, you look at that and you're like, oh, that's crazy. And then you think, literally, not long from now, that is going to be our reality. Just like Walt Disney was doing years and years and years ago, where he was talking about, you know, he did this thing at Disney called the Carousel of Progress. And Cope, I will harp you every day for the rest of my life until you go to Disney. And for the longest time, I always thought it was just for kids, you know. But I wouldn't pass up.
I think you'll probably have to take me there.
I wouldn't pass up. We would have to go together, yeah. I wouldn't pass up. I would not pass up a single opportunity from here on out, because just to see Walt Disney's mind and the way that he created things. You know, Carousel of Progress was something he came up with in the 50s, and he was portraying how people would be in 2000 or in 1990. And it's like all of these things lined up with exactly where we're at now. And we're looking at it in 2018, 2019 like, wow, that's pretty spot on. But you take yourself out of the equation and you realize that he actually wrote that 50 years ago. He wrote that before a cell phone was invented, you know, like the things that he was creating ahead of time and seeing in the future was incredible. Yeah, it's dumbfounding. Carousel of Progress, look it up. It's probably really boring to watch on YouTube, but the idea of it is amazing.
Also, he came up with a thing called, what was it, Epcot? Was it a community?
Yeah.
A visionary community of the future.
Tomorrowland.
Tomorrowland. That's what it was.
Yeah,
I've always thought that was neat, that was almost a philanthropic experiment.
Right.
Where he said, if I can create this community that is based on all the best values of sociology and psychology and how groups work together and how we can formulate a community that is best for all people and very equal, then this could be a catalyst or a pilot project for the entire United States or the entire world. And I thought, man, I mean, the balls that guy has to have.
Crazy. Insane.
In order to be like, I'm going to create what like society should be.
Right. I mean,
and I think he did a great job as far as I know. It wasn't implemented, of course.
You should see it. You should just go to Tomorrowland. You have to go to Disney, Cope. There's nothing else about it. I tell you what I'd like to see.
Okay.
I'd like to get two people in a room. All right. One, Wendy Peppercorn. Two, not just kidding. One, Walt Disney. And two, Elon Musk. Is that his name? Elon Musk, the guy that invented Tesla, right?
Correct.
I would love to get those two in a room and just be a fly on the wall, man. Could you imagine what those guys would talk about? Like,
But you think Elon Musk is essentially the Walt Disney of our time, is in a futuristic visionary?
he's the Disney of our time without the cartoons,
Right.
basically. People will probably laugh at that, but that's extremely accurate. Because Walt Disney saw a need for the world and saw what it would be 50 years ahead of time. And Elon Musk is doing the same thing now, because a lot of people think that the Tesla car, is just some, oh, I'm super rich and wealthy and I want to create a super expensive car only rich people can drive, and it's super cool and it drives itself. No. This dude has an agenda, and it is setting himself and setting our world up for the future of the way it's actually going to be. When fuel is different, when fuel is harder to come by than what it is now, pollution. He's taking all these factors into play, and he is building, right now he's building a roadway system underneath, I think it's like LA, where he's come up.
The Boring Company.
Yeah. And it's like all these things, this guy is doing, he's just projecting his images into the future and trying to see what's the best way, what's the, I don't know, what makes economical sense, or, whatever makes smart word sense. That, that's essentially what he's doing now, which is what Disney was doing years and years ago when he was alive. That'd be a pretty cool conversation. I'd like to hear that conversation between those two.
Hey, speaking of conversations with people dead alive and fantasy and not, do you remember we had that conversation about having a dream with a certain
you went to the council
of people?
You had yours to council, and then it scared you so much. Once you found out what I had been talking about, you experienced it, and it scared you so much you never did it again. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes. What was it called? The Council of Wisdom? Is that?
Yeah, yours, as far as I remember, was called the council, and that was it. It was just the council. And it had cabinet members.
So I will. Yeah. I'll touch on that just in a short stint.
That's a great one.
So you were talking about Walt Disney and Elon Musk being in the same room. Could you imagine?
Right.
So this.
Hey, can I set this up before you tell your story?
Yes, of course.
Because you had the council, right? Before the council had come along, I was talking to Cope, and I was like, I do this weird thing, and Cope was like, of course you do. And basically,
always. That's what I've always said.
Right. I had gotten to the point to where, we had become mildly successful in lucid dreaming. And I said, I'm using this to talk to people that aren't here. And Cope immediately got weirded out for the first couple minutes. And then I think it kind of sank in what could actually come from this. And he's like, what do you mean you're talking to people who aren't here? I'm like, people that are dead, like historical legends or people that, played a big part in society. Like, yeah, man, I literally sat down and had a conversation with Walt Disney the other night. And it was so real. And this just wasn't a dream that happened. This is something that came through lucid dreaming. And Cope was like, that is insane. And so little did I know, Cope's gears were turning from then on. And he went through some experiences in life that were a little tougher than he had wished they would be. And he ended up finding something through those processes and through those circumstances that led him to what he created, which is called the council. And I love this. All right. Take it away, Cope. The council.
All right, the council. Now, it's been a number of years since I've read the book, but I do believe there was a part in the book by Carnegie that said, in the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Mm-hmm. He talked about a mental state that you can go into, that you can seek the advice of people in the past. So I took that a step further, included with your lucid dreaming activities that you'd been up to recently. I said, okay, if I get to the state of lucid dreaming and I can get to the state of being comfortable with asking people that are long past dead for advice, maybe somehow in the ether of the universe or my subconscious trying to tell me something and it couldn't break out, but now it can because it has a voice of its own, I can gain some insightful knowledge. So what I did was we got to a point where you recognize that you're dreaming. Usually you can do this through like a digital clock or something where you're reading a page of a book.
Something with words.
You'll notice in dreams that when you look at a newspaper per se, I don't know how many of you
Look at newspapers in your dreams.
in general, in the daytime or in your dreams, but if you're looking at any page of text, you look down at it and you read it in your dream, you look up, you look down at it again, guess what? The page has changed because your brain only has so much bandwidth and it's not keeping redundant information like what's on the page. It says, forget that, I'll just make up some new stuff. It'll be a lot easier than me trying to memorize what it said beforehand. Same thing with a digital clock. You look at it, 12:53. You look at it again, 12:92.
952.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, wait a minute. That doesn't make so much sense. But when you get to that point and you recognize it and you say, hey, wait a minute, that's wrong. I'm in a dream. And if you can stay in that state without
completely
waking up, because that is the hardest part, is saying, I'm in a dream, and then guess what? You're awake.
Yep.
Because your brain's like, freak out,
restart.
But if you get to that point, then you are lucid dreaming. You realize that you are in a dream, dreaming, and now you have physical, conscious control of your environment. So when you get to that state, it'll take many weeks, but it is possible. And what else are you doing with your time? You're already sleeping.
Right.
I created a council, right, of people that I felt were influential, were wise of the past, living, dead, everything in between, mostly dead. We had Hemingway, Theodore Roosevelt, Abraham Lincoln, a couple Greek philosophers.
Dream team. I'm still a little
The
offended.
dream team.
Still a little offended I didn't make the cut for the cabinet, but that's okay.
Unfortunately, you haven't done anything as influential as those guys, but you got a little bit of time left. So maybe you can be on the dream team of the next generation.
There's still time.
Right. You're still in the league. Still working on that.
I just set the bench.
So keep up with the practice squad. So in this dream team, I'm seeking knowledge, right? In the beginning, it seems silly. I'm thinking, okay, I'm sitting at the end of a long table. Here, Abraham Lincoln is at the head of the table, and I'm surrounded by Hemingway and Theodore Roosevelt and everything in between. I said, oh, I've got a question. What should I do with my life? I'm crossing over into my 20s at that time, so I'm like, I'm kind of lost. Where should I go with my life? What should I do? You're entering college. You don't know what you're doing. So what should I do? You can feel that you yourself are putting words into the mouth of Abraham Lincoln.
Right, of course.
Lincoln, and it feels silly.
Yeah.
Right? But as we went on further and further, it got further from my mouth of what it actually was, and it became more of what they were saying. Right? And it felt odd. You go around it. And then it came to an inflection point.
This is a few weeks in.
Yes. It was a few weeks in. You go to sleep every night. And,
You've done this
you got
several
about a 50%
times.
chance that you're going to get a lucid dream or just go to sleep and wake up. So we got to the point. Abraham Lincoln sitting at the head of the table said, I just don't have the answers. I don't know what I should be doing. And unprovoked, so not in my own head voice, but Abraham Lincoln, literally, without me saying it, said, no, you have all the answers now. You just need to go forth. And it blew my mind. Boone, I'm telling you.
I remember.
He said it. I did not put those words in his mouth. That's not even how I talk.
You called me right away because you were freaked out. You said I might believe in ghosts now because
I've never believed in anything supernatural, but that was a supernatural experience where I said, okay, I'm done with this.
Right.
I've diddled a little bit here and there, dabbled with some lucid dreaming, but I've never went that intense since.
When you break
because
that,
I was worried on what would happen.
Right.
Right.
It's a crazy world.
intense experience though. So I recommend anybody that has ever even heard of this, or if you're just hearing this for the first time, at least try it.
Yeah, give it a
Try
shot.
to recognize when you're in a dream that you're in a dream and take some kind of control of it. It'll take many times, but like I said, what else are you doing?
So the whole idea, and I hope somebody messages us and tells us I'm an idiot and corrects me so I can say it on the next podcast. But I'm almost positive that this is what happens. I studied this so long ago. It's been so long. But when you go to sleep and you're at the actual deep state of sleep, the logic center of your brain
REM
shuts down, shuts off, saving power, reloading for tomorrow. And what happens is when you dream, that is gone. It's dead. It's sleeping. And when you can recognize that you're dreaming, all of a sudden that logic center starts surging, flickering on and off, and all of a sudden when you realize you're dreaming, it's able to turn on, but you are able to stay asleep. Your body is able to be at rest, but the logic center is functioning at just enough of a percentage to where you can control when you're inside that dream. And that narrow window, that narrow tunnel that you got to walk through is very hard to get through for the first couple of weeks. But when you get to the other side, oh my gosh, is it just a revelation of dreaming. You can do anything. I can't tell you how much stuff I've tried to learn, so I didn't have to waste my time trying to learn it in real life to see how I would do as a practice.
Leave it to you to just try to make it productive.
Right, yeah. Gotta make it productive. But yeah, that was some great times. And we started that in 1702. I remember laying down with a notebook, and I remember telling you, like, all right, from now on, we keep a notebook beside us when we go to sleep. A pen is stuck in the little spirally part, so it doesn't fall off, stuck in the little spirally part. And you just wake up in the morning, or whenever you wake up, and as soon as you open your eyes, you just write down everything you remember from your dream, because that's the biggest part of learning. You got to be self-aware. You got to know what you're dreaming. So the more you try to recall it, the more you try to be in that moment, the more you start to get the feel of it and become second nature.
Because remember, the hardest thing about dreams is that when you wake up, you remember the dream so clearly.
Right.
45 seconds later, you remember half of it. 2 minutes later, you remember almost none of it.
Right.
But if you can get into the habit of having it right there, wake up, start writing immediately, by the time you get to the end of the generalized synopsis of what happened, you've essentially captured it, and now you're putting it into your long-term brain when it was just in your tiny minutia of a short-term brain.
Heck yeah. And I remember the first time I got cold chills, and I knew I was close, because I didn't have any luck for a long time. I just woke up and wrote what I could remember. But I remember waking up, and I got cold chills because when I rolled over, and this was at my house by myself, I rolled over, and I looked at my notebook, and there were scribbles on my notebook. And I could make out the words, not very well, but I could make out the words. And it was exactly the dream that I had had. And I had no recollection whatsoever of writing in that notebook. And I was like,
that's great.
That is amazing. And I did the same thing when I got my wisdom teeth cut out. I practiced for several weeks, embedding it into my brain to video myself, a message from my brother Cope here. I had made myself make a video message for when I got out of getting my wisdom teeth taken out, because I saw these videos online where people were super out of it. And I'm like, I'm going to practice before I go in and make a video message for Cope. And I'm going to embed it into my brain to where it becomes a subconscious, subconscious matter. And I didn't remember this, but evidently Cope got a message on my way home, and it was me trying to video myself.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that until later.
It wasn't
on.
Terrible though.
Yeah.
That's the thing. You weren't all loopy or whatever. I'm like, this seems a bit robotic, but
it was very weird. I remember watching it, and I'm like, nope, no idea. Which it worked. I was like, the brain is crazy and it's awesome, and that's basically the overall aspect of being a coach.
I just hope that we can get some kind of audience to the point where we can have some kind of movement, because all I'm saying is like, these kind of things are not like the norm.
Yep.
Right. Of course, lots and lots of people do the same
Right.
exact things we do, but it's not the majority of the population.
Right.
Most people think that's crazy. I can't do that. I'm not going to do that. But God, if we could just get across that there is so much more out there than
Right.
what's just at the surface level.
And that's what we're here for.
I mean, we're talking about going to sleep and doing something while you sleep.
Yep. Which is amazing. Doing something while you sleep actively. And that's what we're out. That's what we're out here to do. So if you want to catch us and you want to hear more about this, we're diving straight in next time. We ain't wasting any time. Straight into our next podcast on the in-depth, crazy side of the brain and how us as blood brothers work. So, Cope, it's going to be good. I'm excited.
On to another one.
On to another
It was a
one.
great podcast.
Great
I appreciate
podcast.
it, Boone. You have a good night.
You too, brother. Hey, don't forget, if it makes a better story,
Do it.
y'all have a good night, good day, good evening, and good morning.
We'll see you next time.
See ya.
The Boone and Cope Show.
Tune your ears to the Boone and Cope Show.